So, Chapter 5. One half of the passengers, weakened and half dead, with the inconceivable anxiety and sickness which the rolling of a vessel at sea occasions through the whole human frame, were incapable of noticing the danger that surrounded them. The other half made loud outcries or fell to their prayers. The sails were ripped to shreds, and the masts were toppled. The vessel was a perfect wreck. Everyone was busily employed, but nobody could be either heard or obeyed. The Anabaptist, being upon deck, lent a helping hand as well as the rest, when a brutish sailor struck him and knocked him to the deck. But from the violence of the blow, the sailor himself tumbled headfirst overboard, and fell upon a piece of the broken mast, which he immediately grasped. Honest James, forgetting the injury he had just received from him, flew to his assistance, and with great difficulty hauled him in again, but in the attempt was, by a sudden jerk of the ship, thrown overboard himself, in sight of the very fellow whom he had risked his life to save, and who took not the least notice of him in this distress. That's just a commentary on human depravity or something, right? Candide, who saw everything that had happened, and saw his benefactor one moment rising above water and the next swallowed up by the merciless waves, was preparing to jump in after him, but was prevented by the philosopher Pangloss, who demonstrated to him that the coast of Lisbon had been made on purpose for the Anabaptist to be drowned there. While he was proving his argument a priori, now, as you probably know, that's an argument based on evidence that comes before evidence from the senses. It has an asterisk down below, a footnote. An argument based on theory rather than experience. Voltaire considered it characteristic of Leibnizian reasoning and philosophy. So while he was proving his argument a priori, the ship foundered, while the whole crew perished, except Pangloss, Candide, and the sailor who had caused the drowning of the good Anabaptist. So the Anabaptist did drown, but that evil sailor did not. The villain swam ashore, but Pangloss and Candide got to land upon a plank. As soon as they had recovered themselves from their surprise and fatigue, they walked towards Lisbon. With what little money they had left, they hoped to save themselves from starving after having escaped drowning. Scarcely had they finished lamenting the loss of their benefactor and set foot in the city, when they felt the earth tremble under their feet, and the sea, swelling and foaming in the harbor, dash in pieces the vessels that were anchored. Large sheets of flame and cinders covered the streets and public places. The houses tottered and were tumbled even to their foundation, which were themselves destroyed, and 30,000 inhabitants of both sexes, young and old, were buried beneath the ruins. That names an actual earthquake that really did take place. Perhaps he wasn't there, perhaps it wasn't all as bad as that, but there was really an earthquake at that time in Lisbon. The sailor, whistling and swearing, cried, "Damn it, there's something to be got here." "What can be the sufficient reason of this phenomenon?" said Pangloss. "It certainly is the day of judgment," said Candide. The sailor, defying death in the pursuit of plunder, rushed into the midst of the ruin, where he found some money, with which he got drunk, and after he had slept off the alcohol, he purchased the favors of the first good-natured wench that came his way, amidst the ruins of demolished houses and the groans of half-buried and expiring persons. Pangloss pulled him by the sleeve. "Friend," said he, "this is not right. You trespass against the universal reason, and your behavior is untimely." "Bloody hell," answered the other. "I'm a sailor and born at Batvia." I don't know if Batvia uses English accents. "And have trampled 4 times upon the crucifixes of many voyagers to Japan. Get out of here with your universal reason." In the meantime, Candide, who had been wounded by some pieces of stone that fell from the houses, lay stretched in the street, almost covered with rubbish. "For God's sake," said he to Pangloss, "get me a little wine and oil. I am dying." "This earthquake is nothing new," replied Pangloss. "The city of Lima, in America, experienced the same last year. That's true. Historically, there's a footnote here that mentions it. The same cause, same effect. There is certainly a train of sulphur all the way underground from Lima to Lisbon. Now, that regarded a widespread theory that that was the cause of earthquakes, vein of sulphur. Nothing more probable, said Candide. But for the love of God, a little oil and wine. Probable, replied the philosopher. I maintain that the thing is demonstrable. Candide fainted, and Pangloss fetched him some water and from a neighboring spring. The next day, in searching among the ruins, they found a little food with which restored their exhausted strength. I don't know if that should say with which they restored their exhausted strength. After this, they assisted the inhabitants in helping the distressed and wounded. Some, whom they had humanely assisted, gave them a good dinner, as could be expected under such terrible circumstances. The meal, indeed, was mournful, and the company moistened their bread with their tears. But Pangloss endeavored to comfort them by affirming that things could not be otherwise than they were. For, he said, all this is for the very best. For if there is a volcano at Lisbon, it could be in no other spot, for it is impossible, but things should be as they are, for everything is for the best. And that's a reference to yet another earthquake that occurred. By the side of the preceptor sat a little man dressed in black, who was one of the familiars of the Inquisition. This person, taking him up with a great complaisance, said, Possibly, my good sir, you do not believe in original sin, for if everything is best, there could have been no such thing as the fall or punishment of men. Good point. Refers to Genesis 3. I humbly ask your excellency's pardon, answered Pangloss, still more politely. For the fall of man, and the consequent curse, necessarily entered into the system of the best of worlds. That is much to say, sir, rejoined the familiar. You do not believe in free will. Your excellency will be so good as to excuse me, said Pangloss. Free will is consistent with absolute necessity, for it was necessary that we should be free. For in that the will... And then he gets cut off. Pangloss was in the midst of his proposition when the Inquisitor beckoned to his attendant to help him to a glass of port wine. Now, that's the end of that chapter. On to chapter 6. Ended rather abruptly. How the Portuguese made a superb auto de fe, D-E-F-E. Now, in the notes in the back, end notes, I think they should be at the bottom of the page. Really angers me to have to go to the back of the book. I don't know why they've been removed to there. I love old books like, there's a book, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Shirer, I've got. And I loved reading that because sometimes the footnotes would take up 3/4 of a page. And there'd just be regular print for 1/4 up at the top, and then footnote, 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 footnote. That's the way to go. Don't bury it at the back of the book. If it's useful and necessary and relevant, have it available whilst you're reading. Why be flipping back and forth? I'm not happy with this. Anyways, from the title, a superb auto de fe, how the Portuguese made a superb auto de fe to prevent any future earthquakes, and how Candide was publicly whipped. Now, an auto de fe is the Portuguese name for act of faith, of a church ceremony consisting of a procession, mass, and burning at the stake of heretics condemned by the Inquisition. An auto de fe took place in Lisbon on June 20th, 1756. So he's referring to an actual event. Well, sort of. I mean, this isn't an actual event he's about to talk about. He's referring to an event that actually happened, sort of, huh? Okay, after the earthquake, which had destroyed 3/4 of the city of Lisbon, the sages of that country could think of no means more effectual to preserve the kingdom from utter ruin than to entertain the people with an auto de fe, it having been decided by the University of Coimbra that burning a few people alive by slow fire, with great ceremony,